It's funny. I think the last time we caught up originally was I think we were either on the cusp of lockdown or maybe we'd just start lockdown, and we were sort of
Yeah,
getting through different ways in which to stay connected over lockdown. And now I feel like such a long time has passed, and
no,
everything's changed, but also like nothing seems to have changed. But um,
it
I
is
think that
crazy, hey?
with this sort of stuff, I do enjoy talking to people like yourself and people like Michael, because you've got both the psych background and the medical background as well. So I get a
Mm,
bit of like, as my mind works and picking questions out from left, right, and center, you guys seem to be pretty
hard
well
out.
to answering the lot.
Hopefully. But I mean, like, I guess, and that just shows, right, in terms of the last 12 months or 18 months or however long it's been now, feels like a decade. It's like, it's just as much like a psychological game as it is a medical one. Like,
Yeah,
even all the stuff this week with all the vaccine rollout drama, like, it's so much more like a mind game for everyone at the moment.
yeah.
So yeah, like you say, comboing it with medicine and psych and everything else in between is probably what we need to be doing. So
Yeah. Well, you at least
I'll try and
you managed to sneak one trip in back home, right?
yep, I did. Went for 2 weeks. Gosh, when was that now? April.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like the travel bubble opened up. I went back for 2 weeks. It was so good just to see my mates and family, and then came back, and then it's pretty much all been like shut down again. So
Yeah.
it's all good. I like whipped in there and then whipped back. So
Um, yeah, it's a very like the vaccine rollout is definitely something that I do want to chat to you about, and I
yeah,
also think it's interesting when I again do talk to people like yourself or Michael. There tends to be a common theme where the more qualified you are, the more you like to preface what you say with "I'm not an expert," whereas like you have the Prime Minister being like, "You're fine," like yeah, no experts
I
here,
know, right?
and so blissfully
I
unaware of
know. I
all
mean,
the
they've even done
technical.
those like, yeah, and they've even done those studies and stuff, and you see the memes on social media every now and then. It's like the more your knowledge about something goes up, there's like this mid zone where people are actually like pretty knowledgeable and expert in what they're talking about, but their confidence to like share that info is way lower than people who actually know less
Yeah.
than them about it. It's like this weird, I guess, like you say, the more you know about something like this, the more you realize it's so complicated and tricky and stuff. So you're probably more likely to be like, I just want to preface that I don't know everything. Whereas if you don't know what you don't know, then you're probably more likely to ScoMo it and be like, hey, everyone, just do this.
Well, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, absolutely.
Which I guess, again, something else I want to talk a little bit about, and I guess the perpetuation of conspiracy theories and everything else that's
Yeah,
circulating around at the moment is like, that's what that is, right? That's a bunch of
yep,
people on social media who have no idea what they're talking
yep,
about, advocating to like not take the vaccine and stuff like that.
absolutely. And it's like, so I think we talked about it last time a bit, didn't we? But the tunnel web spider thing of social media means you can just like get caught reading the same stuff, talking to the same people about the same things, and it's a tiny snapshot of the actual situation, and people just get pulled into, like you say, they know what they know, and then they don't know a whole lot else, and they just like knuckle down on that and go for gold, and it's scary.
Why are we so quick to I guess identify with ideas? Why is it so hard
Mm,
and so damaging to our egos to try to be open-minded enough to be okay with changing our mind when presented with new information?
yeah. Oh man, like that's a chocolate box answer right there. But like, I think something I've been thinking about a lot over the pandemic is just how much our positions and beliefs and actions that come from that. I think a lot of our identity and our sense of self are though, is that. And so I think it's really hard for people, especially in this day and age where we feel like we have to be so polarized. It's hard for us to back down on things or open ourselves to a different opinion or a different belief, because our beliefs give us a sense of identity and certainty. I'm not just Kieran, I'm a guy that goes to the gym and believes in this and does that and feels strongly about these causes, and I think for all of us, that's kind of how we piece our identity together in modern day life. And increasingly we're being pushed, I think, to grab onto ideas and ideologies as stability for our mental state, basically. And that's a sad thing, because as you say, I think it blocks us from being curious. It blocks us from discussion and discourse, rather than just, harassing people and trolling people online because they believe something different. So I think, in a very psychiatristy roundabout way to answer that, I think it's so hard.
How do you feel
for
about
us.
that question?
Yeah, I promise I won't start talking about your relationship with your mum or anything like that. But I think it's so hard for us, because at the deeper level, what we stand by, what we believe, what side of the fence we're on, makes us feel stable and steady in who we are and what we know. And when things are complex, like vaccine rollouts, like COVID, like restrictions, it's really anxiety provoking for people, because it's complicated. There's so many answers, so much information, and the way the brain knuckles down in terms of our sense of self and security is to just pick a fence, pick a side of it, and just kind of knuckle down in that. And I think that's what we've seen in terms of so many really kind of polarized arguments at the moment.
Yeah, so it's more about, I guess, that sense of being in control of something when everything else is.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking a lot about the pandemic just showing how much the brain and our mind doesn't sit nicely with uncertainty. And all of this stuff is so uncertain. There's so many changes, sudden losses. And I think the way that we try and cope with that is getting some sense of certainty. And I think if people can latch onto an idea such as, vaccines are really dangerous, really terrible, I'm absolutely against them, which I'm not using that as an example to call people out, but that's an example of a belief and ideology where I think if we ground ourselves in that, it gives us a sense of security and control in a situation that's actually really anxiety provoking and uncertain.
Yeah, I guess it's never been easier to kind of get that confirmation bias as it is online now, different platforms and stuff, right?
Absolutely, you're right. There are so many little groups, and we talk about echo chambers on social media in particular, and that's this really seductive kind of thing about choosing a side as well, is that we can very easily run with something and fall into an echo chamber where we're only hearing and seeing people who support that view. We're only reading and looking at information that supports that view. And for all of us that have watched that scary AF documentary about social media on Netflix or whatever it is, what is it? The social
dilemma.
The social dilemma, that's the one. I mean, I think that shows just how much those platforms are actually geared towards just showing us the kind of information that we already want to see and agree with and believe in. So I completely agree with that. There's never been a bigger time for our beliefs to just absolutely kind of be echoed back to us, and that can again make it really hard to see the other side of the fence or open ourselves to other positions or information.
Do you think as a community we're getting more mentally resilient or less mentally resilient?
Ooh. I would like to think more, but I guess the scary thing is at the moment, stats and research is showing that our resilience is really being tested, and that's completely understandable. I think hopefully in coming years, we're going to see that for many of us, this is a time where we are building resiliency. But I think for so many people, this is something we've never had to go through before. So it's an absolute challenge to our sense of self, our relationships, that sense of security and grounding. And with that comes anxiety, depression, sleeping problems, all of those things that we know are pretty sky high at the moment. So I think at the moment, probably a lot of people are feeling like resiliency is not a box that they'd put themselves in. But in a weird roundabout way, we know that's how resiliency builds, right? We put ourselves in the pressure cooker and come out more resilient. And a lot of people are struggling. But I'm hoping, I guess, in a optimistic silver lining kind of way, it's going to be a way that a lot of us build resiliency as well, because it's a pretty shite old time, but in another way, it's grounded us in things that are really important too, like just how much we rely on connection and relationships, or finding what we in and are of ourselves, rather than being able to go out on the weekends or just a career. Like all of these things are kind of shifting at the moment. And so hopefully in the long run, that'll build mental resilience. But I think it's pretty normal and okay if people are feeling like their resilience at the moment is pretty low, because, I've been in that spot over the last year as well at different points.
Yeah. Is lockdown fatigue, is that a genuine, I like the last 3 weeks, to me, they felt longer than the 4 months of last year when we were in.
Yeah, mate. And I agree. When I was talking to mates here or family back home, it was weird. Hey, I felt this last lockdown we had in Victoria felt more of a mental struggle than that 3 or 4 months of lockdown we were in last year. And I think it's this accumulative sort of exhaustion in a way of going in and then coming out and going in again, coming out again. It takes a lot of mental resource for the brain, just as we said, to be chopping and changing, finding a new routine, finding a new set point. So yeah, I think feeling fatigued with all of this is hugely on the cards for people at the moment, and I definitely felt that too. 2 weeks felt like you say, it felt like a year.
Well, it was 3 weeks for the gym.
This is true.
That was part of it. There was I felt a few things with it. I think I would have rather they'd said we're locking down for a month and then 3 weeks later be like, great job, we're opening up a week early. Yeah. As opposed to we're going to do another week. Oh, surprise, we're going to do another week and the third. But yeah, I just remember that 3 weeks. I was just like, and we work from home. All our recording is from home. We've got the kind of the gym set up in the garage, and it was like, I just procrastinated doing all the things that I know I needed to do. I was just like, I just don't want to do anything, which is quite strange. And I like to think of myself as being quite mentally resilient, but I was just grumpy for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, mate, and me too. I'm, you and I are very similar people, I think, normally pretty motivated, pretty busy, pretty optimistic, depending on the time of day it is and if I'm hangry or not. But yeah, for those 3 weeks, I really felt it too. I was like, I actually don't feel like doing a home workout. I feel like just watching some trashy rubbish on Netflix and just lying on the couch. And I think that's part of that exhaustion and adjustment to coming in and out of things. But I think something I've been talking to people about is also just being gentle on ourselves and acknowledging that as well. Because lockdown also comes with a lot of productivity pressure and a sense of, I still just have to keep on keeping on. But actually, it's okay, I think, for it to feel pretty crap and to feel like we're a little bit off the rails, because who wouldn't be?
Yeah. I think, I said to Kat, I'm like, I think we just need a holiday. But the trouble is, what do you do? You book, and all of a sudden it's like, nah, not going, you know?
I know.
Like I've got mates organizing a wedding at the moment, and I cannot
Oh,
imagine
man.
trying to do that in,
Yeah,
you know, over the last 12 months.
absolutely.
12. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that kind of what you said before, like it feels like the level of which isolation, even though maybe we're less isolated than we have been, it's starting to branch out. Like it's not necessarily that you're locked down on your own, but it's like you're locked down with the same people, or, you know, now it's like not leaving the state to go on holiday, whatever it is. It just feels like, ironically, like everything else is changing except your environment, which is like the one thing you want to change.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think maybe in 2021, it's not as, you know, at least here in Australia and most of the world, thankfully, you know, the situation doesn't feel as urgent or scary or life-threatening in some ways as it did this time last year. But I think the interesting thing with mental reactions and adjustments to things is it takes a while, I think, for the full effect of those things to sink in. So actually what we're seeing in mental health and in psychiatry and things at the moment, we're starting to see some of the impacts on people from last year kind of starting to take hold. And, you know, the brain is an incredibly resilient thing overall. We can have a lot of stuff thrown at us and we'll adjust, we'll get through, the adrenaline will kind of kick in. And I know for me that I think that's what happened a lot last year, even with that longer lockdown. You know, it was kind of a bit like, oh, this is kind of new. I'm going to start trying to run and give myself shin splints. You know, it was kind of this thing where we were like, all right, well, this is new, this is weird, this is scary. We're going to just get on with it. Whereas this year, I think it's kind of this sense of, shit, okay, like this isn't just a 12-month thing, or this isn't something that's just going to be around for a few months and then snap back. The way the world is now and the way that our lives have to shift is, I think, really starting to settle in for a lot of people. And, you know, longer term goals we've had in terms of traveling or weddings or moving overseas for some work experience overseas, you know, all of those longer term things I think are starting to sink in now as things that are really kind of having to shift and change a little bit in terms of what's still going on in the world. And that's tough to kind of start to come to grips with and acknowledge that, because I think to start with, we could kind of hold off a little bit and think, all right, well, you know, working out at home for 3 months is pretty shite, but I'll get through it and do it. Whereas, you know, when you have to start thinking about your longer term life plans and goals and things, it's that much harder. Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree. You can only do so many like running and burpee combinations in the driveway.
Well, mate, your home gym's been making us all jealous since, you know, 18 months ago. But yeah, I feel you.
It's fun, like it is funny, even with that, like sometimes you just like, even just to go outside and turn left and go into the garage is just like too much effort. So,
it's triggering. It's like you need a trigger warning. Yeah.
If we turning our kind of attention, I guess, more to the physical side and the vaccine itself, it's been interesting to, I guess, watch different nations' reactions. And I know we kind of have a lot of, for us in particular, a lot of eyes on sort of Canada and how they're kind of going about there. And I guess contrasting that to how things are going out here, I read a stat in Men's Health yesterday that of the 3 million first doses that have been taken at the moment, that you've been responsible for giving out 2 million of them. So you've obviously
been trying, man. Shit, I hope they didn't write that, because my phone's going to be blowing up right about now. Yeah, no, it's been interesting, mate. Like, as you say, last year I completed the clinical component of my psychiatry residency or registrar life. So it's been an interesting year for me too, because I've, you know, still been doing locum psychiatry work, but I've also been working in a vaccine hub in a vaccine clinic for the last 3 or 4 months now, on and off too. And it's been this fascinating intersection of medicine, but still psychiatry, because so much of my work in that clinic has been talking to people about weighing up risks and talking to them about their anxiety and hesitancy about getting the vaccine. And that's all completely understandable. But yeah, it's been this really interesting time where, I've become more drawn into the nitty-gritty frontline kind of vaccine rollout than I ever sort of anticipated I would.
So is the vaccine, I guess, from a layman's perspective, like, is that essentially the remedy for lockdowns? Is it going to get to a point where hopefully as a community we have enough of a majority to be like, cool, now that X amount of people are vaccinated, it's kind of just like, that's it kind of deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's still so complex and tricky to say where things will get to, but I think that's what we're starting to see for a lot of countries who have hit those higher percentages of the population being vaccinated. So a lot of chat this week about places like Singapore, for example, in terms of opening up their community and saying, look, we're actually going to stop some of those active efforts in terms of stopping it transmitting between people. And the theory there for people in terms of the basic kind of public health and medical science around that is that when enough people are vaccinated to the point where there's protection in the community for the most vulnerable from getting really, really sick or overwhelming the medical system to the point where people can't be given the treatment that they need. When a population gets to that point in terms of a vaccine, then yeah, as you say, that argument is there around opening things up to try and start living with something rather than, just completely blocking it out and walling the country off. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the world moves forward with that in the coming months. But yeah, places like the US, the UK, they are starting to make that shift because significant numbers of their population are vaccinated, and we're reaching what we call that herd immunity type level, where when enough people are vaccinated, it means hopefully there's reduced spread of an illness because of the efficacy of the vaccine, but most importantly, the population is protected from it really being a life-threatening, severe illness, hopefully for the majority of people. So yeah, Australia is unfortunately a long way off that at the moment because I think our vaccination rate is under 5%. And, I think you need to be sort of hitting the 70, 80% mark to be feeling confident and comfortable probably to start opening things up.
I think we're the lowest in Oceania, I think.
We are, those stats were released today as well, which I think have led to some interesting knock-on effects from the government and things. But I mean, we're in this really interesting spot here in Australia where, we've been very, very lucky in terms of keeping COVID-19 out of our communities, and our infection rates and death rates and things have been incredibly low compared to other countries. But it's kind of reached this interesting intersection where that may have actually held us back from some of the urgency around getting vaccinated. Because, as you say, mate, choosing to be vaccinated or not get a vaccination is, not something as a doctor that I want to ram down people's throats. But, absolutely, for something like this, the vaccine is the way forward if we want to come out of border closures, lockdowns, and restrictions, because otherwise, COVID-19 is not the flu. Otherwise, it is a very dangerous, for a lot of people, severe illness that kills people. So the vaccine is the way forward there.
Is there anything to the kind of impacts or how, I guess, like badly you react to the vaccine indication of, well, how sick you would have gotten from COVID? Is there any correlation between the two there?
Not that I've seen, no. I mean, it's interesting, and some people, it's very normal and common to get some side effects, brief side effects from the vaccine. I actually had my second dose yesterday, so fully vaxxed, which feels good.
Did you
But yeah,
did you give yourself the injection?
no way, mate. The nurses in the vaccine clinic who are giving the vaccine are so bloody good that they wouldn't even let me touch one of the needles, which is, I think, a good thing. So, but yeah, they were joking yesterday because they were like, "Oh, well, I guess you have to monitor yourself for the 15 minutes afterwards." And I was like, "Wow." Let's all hope that I don't have a reaction because you guys are going to have to step it up. But yeah, but I was just saying, so today I can feel something is there. You can feel when your immune system is kind of gearing up. And so it's normal to feel those headachy, kind of tired type symptoms. But no, I haven't seen any kind of correlation between how someone feels or reacts to the vaccine being linked to how they would be hit or not hit by COVID-19. And again, something that might just be a little bit random and individual because some people have been vaccinated and haven't felt a bloody thing. And then other people have had their first dose or their second dose and really been hit quite hard by some of those expected, but sometimes quite significant temporary effects like feeling really tired and feverish and headachy.
Yeah. And you can confirm that there's no implementation of microchips and or 5G, like anything.
I can categorically confirm that there is nothing else in that stuff other than the vaccine. And I can also confirm that, bloody hell, like where do we even start? But I mean, I can definitely confirm that you don't shed the virus from your hair after you get vaccinated, so you're safe to get a haircut. What else? It is not going to leak out of your pores and affect people who aren't vaccinated around you. Yeah, my God, mate, there have been so many myths and things going around. It's crazy.
What was was it the protein anchor, or there was something to do the anchor site or something ended up moving around the body, like something like that?
So, I mean, there's been so many different things, but yeah, I mean, we've seen it with stuff this year that has nothing to do with the virus or the vaccine as well. But studies come out showing one thing, and then people have read that and then linked it falsely to something to do with the vaccine, and then kind of run with it, causing something that actually has no backing behind it at all. So there was something about, I think, one of the protein components in a vaccine being linked to a protein within the placenta or for women's reproductive health.
Yeah.
And actually those two things had no link whatsoever, but it sparked this whole conspiracy theory and really frightening myth that was going around social media about women who were vaccinated. If they came into contact with women who were unvaccinated, it would somehow be able to sort of pass through people's contact and interrupt the menstrual cycle and damage fertility and things.
Sounds like a virus. Sounds like something a virus might do.
Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. So absolutely not true. But again, you couple some of these myths and conspiracies to really emotionally hitting scary things like fertility, like the safety of children. And it's no wonder that people really get very anxious and unsure about the vaccine and what's going on, because it's coupled to really fiery, emotionally intense stuff, even if there's absolutely no medical evidence to back it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like Jenny McCarthy taking the run with the autism links in like the early 2000s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I mean, far out, I've met and know a lot of people with autism who are incredible human beings, but I think for parents, in terms of thinking about children, and obviously that was just something that was really frightening for parents. So again, when a false claim is coupled to these really emotional things, it just can run like a wildfire because for understandable reasons. So yeah, absolutely the same vein. I think a lot of the myths around COVID-19 and the vaccine, we've seen them coupled to these really emotionally provocative issues. And that's why I think it's been so confusing and sort of damaging for people in terms of trying to sift through all this stuff, because, no one wants to take something that's going to maybe make them infertile. So if you see that or hear that in a post, understandably, it's going to make you really anxious and worried.
Yeah. And can you speak in terms of, like, I guess the turnaround in which we've sort of seen the vaccine developed be more of, I guess, an example of what we can achieve when globally we work together on an issue, as opposed to like, it's been rushed. It's been rushed through.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's been a big kind of tagline for people in terms of being made to feel anxious and unsure about the vaccine. If you look at the trials, you look at the way they've been done, they absolutely haven't been rushed or, skipped in steps or hashed together. This isn't something that's just happened in someone's kind of shed out the back. As you say, this is like an absolute example of what collectively the world's scientists and health systems can do when research time and energy is just all geared towards one thing. And I heard a doctor talking about it in a different podcast last week, actually, but sort of saying this should be something that we are proud of and feeling really good about. But again, it's kind of been spun in this really suspicious kind of anxiety-provoking way to say, well, why has it been done so quickly? And it's not because it's been skipped or rushed. It's because the world has come together to make this happen. So, absolutely.
Well, the problem is it gets politicized too, right? And then it's
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've seen so much with the pandemic as well. This isn't obviously as simple as these are the medical facts, this is what's best for health. These things billow out, understandably, into political arguments and ideologies and, different weighing up of things in terms of impacts on the economy and the community. And those are all really, really important things. But again, I think it can make the actual medical evidence and science kind of diffuse out a little bit and become really confusing and overwhelming, because it's not just the science of the vaccine, it's also a political argument and an economic argument and a distribution argument. So it's, even for those of us in the health field, it's a bloody confusing, overwhelming kind of world at times that it's hard to keep up with. If you're not actively making sure you are.
Yeah, it's harder to read research papers and easier just to watch a Netflix documentary and conclude that you've done your research. Right?
Amen. And it's, I think...
Don't eat meat, don't eat fish, the vaccine's planned, like it's all part of this government trap.
I mean, mate, some days I just want to curl up in a ball and just kind of rock myself to sleep, because it feels like, well, what can I eat or take or do that's not going to hurt myself or others or the environment? So yeah, absolutely. It can be very seductive to fall into some of these arguments, especially when they're presented in a more emotionally grabbing, attention-keeping way. Sifting through databases online and reading a dry academic vaccine study is, of course, not as
the big words, man. Those big words. Stumbling my way through half a Latin degree to try to understand.
And I think everyone in medical school or some area of health right now, I mean, you'll know this as well, mate, but even talking to my family on the phone some days, they'll ask me a question about something, and I'll say, oh, no, I read I updated myself on that last week, and no, it's this. Oh, but Karen's mum's cousin from the office said, and I'm like, well, and that's not a bad thing, but it just shows psychologically, emotion, social connection, engagement, all of these other things are so intertwined with information we receive and how we process it and what weight we give it. So if Karen's mum's cousin's brother from the school office said that this is the case, it's understandable why that is quite engaging for our mind, compared to some dry doctor on a podcast being like, no, the research shows this. And that's something that the pandemic's really showing us as well. It's the power of how and why we believe what we believe. It's pretty fascinating.
It's choose your friends wisely, really, isn't it?
It is. And it's me saying, Mum, I respect I respect their thoughts, but please listen to your medically educated son over that random person in the supermarket. So yeah,
there was a really good meme going around. It's like 5 scientists in this big technical lab, and one of them's on a computer. And it's like, whoa, have we like Bob from Mildura's just made a really good point on this post? Have we considered this?
Absolutely.
The power of, I guess, your peer group is incredible, right?
Yep.
And I guess when
Absolutely.
you don't, even for we kind of had a conversation, a coach's chat the other day, and we're talking about teens in nutrition and encouraging parents to kind of take more of an active role in having some discussions about like body image and things like that with kids, because if they don't get it from you, they're going to get it from somewhere, and it's essentially the same thing here. Right?
Amen. Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is 100% not to shame or blame people for believing certain things or feeling anxious about certain things. I do want to make it clear that it's absolutely not about that, because this is what the mind is designed to do. And I think us having discussions about this stuff is the key step, because if we've got all our scientists and doctors and people who support being vaccinated and things on one side, and people who are unsure or anxious or against it, who are made to feel like they're on the other side, research shows that actually only makes the gap between different ideologies and people wider. So just as we said when we started talking, mate, I think it's about kind of trying to pull ourselves out of those, I'm on this side of the fence, you're on that side, and acknowledging it's okay and actually just a normal part of humanity to be worried about stuff or questioning of things. But it's about talking about it rather than just going down the Alice in Wonderland kind of online rabbit hole.
I would love to have like this platform eventually get to a point sometimes, and it could be used for debate and have two people who have, problem is, in my experience, or I guess in my interaction with people who seem to be anti-vax team, it's hard to find someone that actually is accredited to a degree where it's like, well, the level of knowledge or the level of how informed you are is even, right? But it does get confusing when you see people who are, well, I guess at least allegedly doctors, kind of putting out stuff as well, and whether that's for development of their own platform or whatever it is, but they tend to be, raising points that are counter to, I guess, disinformation too.
And I agree with that. It's really confusing for people, and it does. I think it strikes fear into people when you've got all these messages saying trust the science, trust your doctor, trust the scientists, and then you have a doctor on social media coming out saying, I was gonna say, can we do that bleep out thing if I name any But no, like a doctor coming out saying you don't need the vaccine, you just need to eat more goji berries and cranberry juice to try and reduce your risk of dying from COVID. I can completely see why that is so confusing for people. But I think it's also important to point out that as doctors and health professionals, obviously our education and experience is there to try and ground us in being objective and looking at the science. But, doctors are people too. And I think, doctors will have their own emotional and personal agendas with things. And sometimes, unfortunately, I think that reaches in terms of that bell curve. If you could put doctors on a bell-shaped curve, there's always going to be some at the extreme. Yeah, there's going to be outliers who believe some pretty out there, not scientifically backed things. And the fact that they've got that doctor tagline at the start of their name is unfortunate, because it does create a lot of confusion and anxiety, I think.
Yeah. That being said, do you think the level of messaging or information that's kind of out there about steps, pragmatic steps that you can take to improve your health and immune system function in terms of exercise and activity and supplementation, like it's almost been disappointing how little of that there's been. And then I guess when you see that over the lockdown, like Dan Murphy's has had record breaking kind of quarterly profits, it's like we're not getting it. Like we don't get it, right, as a community.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I love that point, mate, because that's the thing as well. It's not to say that doctors or anyone should be sitting back and thinking that looking after your diet or trying to get an extra hour or two of sleep or exercising, we shouldn't be thinking that those are just nothing, that don't have any impact, because far out they do. And if you're going to replace some really nutritionally devoid processed food with some goji berries and cranberry juice, like, if we're weighing things up, obviously diet and nutrition has a huge impact on mental health as well as physical. But I think it's some of these extreme arguments that come out saying, if you have depression, you can just tweak a few things in your diet and have some more antioxidants, and that's going to have you come right. That is not the case. So I think it's balancing these things. But yeah, I really agree. Like, there's absolutely a place for us to be pushing for people to take active, I think, steps towards improving their health. And is a diet necessarily going to protect you from dying from COVID-19 in and of itself? No. But if you're looking after your diet and balancing your diet and exercising and focusing on your health, does that help your immune system function at its best? Absolutely. So it's this really delicate argument, isn't it? Because there's all this talk about immune boosting. Whereas, I think sometimes it's sold in a much more kind of pushed, provocative way than is actually scientifically backed. So it's
you touched on sleep there, and I know we had a quick chat a couple of weeks ago about Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep.
Yeah,
and for everyone who hasn't
we both said it was anxiety provoking as well.
I think since then I've said to a few people, I haven't read too much over the last 5 years that really wants to make me change the way that we practice a lot of what we do. But that book is definitely potentially one of those. And there's a point in there, and it's as good as it is, it's difficult to read because it's like everything is like this, like bang, like mic drop kind of like moment, right? And it's like on Audible, it's 15 hours of mic drop moments. Like it's hard to be hitting many bombs, but they run this study where they're testing immune system response to sleep deprivation, where they're like flushing cold virus up people's noses, sleep deprived, to look at the impact of reduced sleep in the lead up, and it's like incredible, like the outcomes of the difference it can make.
it's amazing in terms of the power that some of those foundational things can have over our health. And obviously, that I like waffle on about it to nauseum, but like it has just as much of an effect on our mental health as our physical health in a lot of ways. And I think modern society has become a society where we're all about, and it's a beautiful thing in some ways, but we're about the magic bullets and the added extra and the new technology and this and that. Whereas I feel like in my work as a doctor, I spend most of my time talking to people about those absolute foundations of humanity that have been with us since we like flopped out of the trees, the primordial soup, so things like sleep, things like diet, things like resting, those things have a huge impact on our health. And it's not to say, for example, that if someone has schizophrenia and they just get an extra hour's sleep of night, we're not saying that that is going to cure an illness, but absolutely, if you're looking for ways to look after yourself and your health and your resilience, then getting some more sleep, looking at your diet, getting some exercise, science unequivocally shows that those things are beneficial. But yeah, I think, like I said to you last week or whenever it was, mate, I started reading that sleep book when I was on night shifts. And I texted a mate at the time and I was like, damn, this book sounds like it's going to be good. I was like a few pages in and he was like, why the heck are you reading that on night shifts? You are gonna like give yourself an aneurysm. And I was, you're right, because I was like, I think there's a whole chapter on what flipping your sleep schedule and what night shifts does to your health. And I was just
it's a carcinogen, right? Like
yeah, I mean, it's listed as a carcinogen with the World Health Organization, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this away and I'll keep reading it when I get off night shifts. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
It is funny after, and I guess we're kind of getting pulled off topic here, but when you are a little sleep deprived and you kind of struggle with absent-mindedness, and he's like, yeah, that's Alzheimer's. That's basically that Alzheimer's insurance coming for you.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I think the vaccine, the thing that makes me laugh the most is, and I posted this not too long ago, but researchers took 60 samples of Subway tuna sandwiches and sent them to labs, and they came back testing 0% for tuna DNA from the tuna sandwich. And so it's kind of like we have all this like worry about the vaccine and everything else, but like no one gives a shit about kind of what they're eating literally every day, Not no one, I shouldn't say no one, but there's so much kind of going on in terms of what makes up that typical diet that just gets no time, that has, a pretty detrimental impact as well.
Absolutely, and I think I was talking to a friend, a medical colleague the other day. We were talking about something to do with the vaccine that cropped up in the media. And obviously I know it's not exactly the same thing, but it's interesting that we forget that we take risks and we make automatic risk versus benefit judgments in our mind every single day with nearly every single thing we do, if you think about it. When I take the elevator in my apartment building as opposed to the stairs, when I get in the car instead of walking to work, we make these decisions about our health and about our lives every single day that actually is a risk benefit way up. And someone asked me, I did a Q&A on social media recently. Someone asked, would you say the vaccine is safe? And that is just obviously a super complicated question. And medically, scientifically, we would call the vaccine safe based on the level of benefit risk and the likelihood of you being harmed or put in a dangerous position. I mean, I think a lot of us would say that our car is safe, but holy heck, don't we see every single day how unsafe driving and being on the road can be? there's a quote, I'm in the safety and comfort of my own home, but houses can catch on fire, houses can be broken into, things happen in homes that are anything but safe at times. And so safety is not something being devoid of any and all risk, because life and health is about a weigh up of risk versus benefit. And I think in some ways our focus on all the potential horrible things that COVID and the vaccine brings has pulled us away from looking at it in terms of it. We're talking risk versus benefit. So yeah, there's been some interesting discussions and arguments there as well.
I think that's interesting, because what that's sort of like, what you kind of get to that point too is you're weighing up your own personal risk and benefit, right? So if you're a 30-year-old, no kind of comorbidities, like very healthy, and you assess your risk of, if you get COVID, that you would get thoroughly sick as low, then why would you bother? Like it's kind of everyone else that's going to suffer from your not getting the vaccine, but potentially you put yourself as someone who's in a better position.
Yeah, and I mean, that's obviously been something we've heard a lot of people talking about in terms of the vaccine as well, and they're absolutely right in terms of if you're a young, fit, healthy 30-year-old guy, chances are, touch wood, a COVID-19 infection is not going to hit you as hard as someone who has medical comorbidities or who is 80, obviously. But the risk is still there. We've still had young, healthy people getting seriously sick and even dying from COVID-19. And actually, the current data we have shows that your risk of being a healthy 30-year-old, your risk of severe outcomes is much higher if you got COVID compared to if you got a COVID vaccine. So again, we can't look at these things in isolation. They have to be weighed up in terms of relative risk and risk versus benefits. And, it's also been an interesting time because it's really pulled out of people as well, I think, about how we think about ourselves and others. I was keen to get vaccinated as soon as possible, so that when I went back to New Zealand and visited my grandmothers who are in their 80s, I could feel more confident that I was hopefully going to be less likely to pass things on to them or to patients within the hospital. So the vaccine argument is also not just about the risks to ourselves, but it's about the risk to others. And again, that's when we start talking about those herd immunity levels of 70% of the population or whatever being vaccinated. This has to be a team effort, and we kind of have to be thinking about things broader than just ourselves as well.
Yeah. Now, again, when we talk about the vaccine being safe, and again, when we kind of like pull ScoMo into it, and we have the chief medical officer in Queensland say absolutely not just go out and get the AstraZeneca vaccine if you're under 35 or 40. So again, can you speak much to like what's the difference between like the different vaccines available, and why is age a relative factor in kind of how they're working, and why bother having alternatives, and why not just kind of have one?
Yeah. I mean, again, a really complex thing to break down, but I mean, different countries have done this differently. So some countries, for example, the UK, the majority of the population, including younger people, were vaccinated with AstraZeneca. I think in terms of the AstraZeneca argument, and again, I will preface the point that I am not an infectious disease doctor. I'm not a vaccine expert. People are going to be like, why the heck is this psych doctor talking about vaccines? But again, being a doctor and trying to keep myself up to the play in terms of the science behind all these things, the risk in terms of AstraZeneca and this rare clotting syndrome is that it is more likely to affect people who are younger. And we're not quite sure why that's the case, but it's likely to do with the fact that younger people may be more likely to generate a stronger immune response to a vaccine. And so because this is an immune mediated reaction where the immune system kind of crosses over and interacts with normal bodily tissues and creates a clotting sort of syndrome, to put that in extreme layman's, probably butchered, so to speak.
Extreme layman's terms, I'm still like hanging on by a thread.
No, I was just meaning I probably butchered that, so apologies to any colleagues listening. But basically, the data shows,
you don't have any colleagues listening to this podcast.
The data shows at the moment that if you are in those younger age profiles, the risk is still very low, but the risk is higher for people who are older. And obviously we want to get people vaccinated and make them safer from COVID-19, but we want to do that with as little risk and harm as well. So, I think that argument around age ranges for different vaccines is to try and minimize any risk, even if that risk is very tiny. But I guess what we've seen this week in Australia is an argument that a lot of people want to be vaccinated. A lot of people are aware that there's a very small risk with a certain vaccine based on their age, and they are willing to, again, weigh up the risk versus benefits and make an informed decision. That's what doctors do all the time with patients. Basically, anything we do in medicine is a discussion of risk versus benefit, because nothing comes without a risk. If I'm talking to a patient about receiving electroconvulsive therapy to help improve their depression, there obviously has to be a discussion of risks. And if the patient is in a mental state where they can make an informed choice and take on some of those risks for the benefits, then we go ahead. And I guess some of the argument has been that maybe we should be taking that same approach with the vaccine, but that's not something that has been at the moment fleshed out or backed by the Australian Medical Association or the Immunisation Advisory Board. And again, I am not a political expert either, but the scary thing this week has been this disagreement that's kind of emerged between the government and the medical bodies who are making these decisions based on risk versus benefits, because you've got one saying, well, we should be letting people choose, and we've got another saying, well, no, we should be getting them access to a vaccine that doesn't have that risk. So it's a tricky one.
I guess again, it gets kind of murky when we talk about there's always going to be a percentage of the population unable to receive a vaccine for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so by choosing not to get it, if you can get it, you're actually just putting others at more risk than necessary, right? So yeah, as opposed to the electroshock therapy, which is purely individual.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different layers to this, and it's really complex, because obviously, just using myself as an example, I received the AstraZeneca vaccine with an awareness that it's
a gambling, man,
mate. But again, in terms of most people a lot of people on the front line have received it, knowing that there is this, again, very, very tiny, a very small risk of some of these bad outcomes. But if you're in a profession and a job where you're more likely to come into contact with COVID-19, and then if you were infected, take on the risks that brings to you, for me personally, it's a no-brainer. The potential negative outcomes for my health if I caught COVID as an unvaccinated doctor, the risks there are hugely outweighing the potential risks of being vaccinated. So, as you say, it's this thing where we're looking at people individually in terms of their health, their workplace, their risk, but then you add the layer of it's about the community and other people as well. It's no wonder that this is the number one topic across the globe at the moment, because it's really, really bloody complex.
In your opinion, I think the last sort of set of numbers I saw, and this was a while ago, I think before lockdown, and probably, if anything, lockdown's kind of been maybe a bit of a kick up the arse that we kind of needed to be like, we need to get on the vaccination train. I think it was something like 3 million first doses had been received, but only like 40,000 second doses. Do you think, are we better off inoculating those that have had one dose, giving them their second and having them fully vaccinated? Or do you think we're better off getting everyone at least one shot as quickly as possible?
I mean, again, this is a question that I'm sure, like the vaccine experts are, I think they would be hot pressed to answer that one. But I mean, from what I know, like obviously having one dose of the vaccine gives us more protection than 0 doses, right? But to get the most efficacious outcome from the vaccine, most of them need 2 doses. And I think at the moment, the data shows that to retain your level of protection, it's best to have both doses. So, I think we need people to be feeling comfortable that if they're going to put themselves in the arena, they're there for the whole show. And if you're going to get one dose of a vaccine, it's in your absolute best interest to follow through and get the second dose. And when it comes to some of these risks and potential reactions to a vaccine, the first dose is where most of that risk looks to lie. So, as an example, the risk of this rare clotting syndrome with the AstraZeneca vaccine is primarily occurring in people's first dose. So it's much, much, much lower risk on your second dose for that outcome, as an example. So, we want people to be getting fully vaccinated, because that means that the community is getting the best level of protection, and hopefully they're going to retain that level of protection for a longer period of time.
That's interesting, because I think, just anecdotally, the people that I know that have had both shots seem to be more feeling like a bit under the weather after the second shot, more so than the first. But I have no idea if that's AstraZeneca versus Pfizer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, again, everyone's individual, and I've heard different things as well. I think what the overall kind of outcomes are showing, that, again, it's just interesting. But for AstraZeneca, the first dose tends to hit people harder in terms of some of those normal side effects. And I definitely noticed that. And the second dose, a lot of people aren't getting any side effects from. Whereas for Pfizer, it seems to be the other way around, that the first dose people don't really feel that much, and then the second dose people get more headachy, tired, and things the next day. So it's interesting.
And then just to confuse everyone, in Canada now, there's a huge percentage of people who have had one of each as their 2 shots.
Yes, which is creating, again, as you say, some confusion over here.
What is going on, dude?
Mate, I don't know. I'm just like, we need to make this simple. We need to, it's kind of like the toothpaste aisle, I think, again, psychological research shows that the more choice and the more information we have, the more likely our brain is to feel overwhelmed, anxious, confused, and not be able to make a choice or feel confident in that choice. So, sometimes less is more. So, yes, but I can confirm that in Australia, we are not taking that approach at the moment. So, it's sticking to one lane or the other.
What's your prediction for, when we sit down in 12 months time and we're like, okay, here we are, here are how things looking. I mean, short of the government making the vaccine mandatory, which I can't see happening, but what I can see happening is footy's on at the MCG, but you have to show that you're proof of vaccination along with your ticket in order to get into these big kind of events, or to travel. Or is that something that you think is probably feasible?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I would hope not. I really hope that we are just kind of, we're getting the snowball rolling here in Australia in terms of we've had things really good in terms of being isolated from some of the brunt of the impacts from COVID, compared to the urgency needed in other countries and how people have adjusted to that and gotten jabbed. So, I mean, I would really hope that we're at a stage where vaccination rates really pick up, the community gets on board, and we reach those target levels of vaccination that we need, to the point where we can hopefully feel confident that when enough of the population is vaccinated, maybe, we're not going to have to segregate people too much into, you can do this if you're vaccinated or not if you're unvaccinated. I mean, obviously, as a human being and also as a doctor, I would hope that that's where we get to. But yeah, I mean, I think if there are still going to be risks in those, denser sort of packed places or with travel and things, I think
surely surely, especially initial travel, it's going to be like only vaccinated for like tourist visas and stuff like that. Surely.
Yeah, I mean, I will not be surprised if like, as you say, in 12 months' time, our vaccination status is coupled to travel and potentially to other things. And I think for a lot of people that feels like a very scary thing, because that feels like very much a mandated kind of, not a carrot, but it's the stick rather than the carrot, isn't it? It's like, well, if you want to go to the MCG and watch the footy, then you're going to have to force yourself to get this jab. And even as a doctor, that doesn't make me feel the most comfortable. And I think a lot of doctors would be in that position. We don't want people to feel forced or corralled into having to do this, but to keep the population safe, to prevent massive outbreaks occurring, then I think probably our hopefully short-term foreseeable future is that whether you're vaccinated or not is actually going to be an important medical factor for some of the things that we're wanting to do, because there are real risks to people that come with traveling or going into a more densely kind of packed area compared to if you're vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
Well, there's a reason we're not like ravaged by polio as a community, right?
Yeah. Amen. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Even now, like, obviously we've got Matea and she's going through her shots as well. And it's very much like, it's not mandatory, but like you get a kind of knock on the email door from government saying like, hey, if you have any intentions to like claim family tax benefit or anything like that, then you have to keep to this immunization schedule. And so again, it's like, it's not mandatory, but it's in your best interest. Right?
It's kind of like, it's highly encouraged, but we can't force you. And again, I think that is, I mean, and especially being in psychiatry, there's this really tricky little zone with health and public health and medicine where, the health system is trying its best to keep people safe. And as we've just said, from a more than an individual level, to keep communities safe. And, for my work in psychiatry, sometimes, for example, that might mean using the Mental Health Act to detain someone in hospital if them being mentally unwell puts them at risk to the community, and obviously it's a completely different bucket. But when we're talking about encouragement and things for vaccines, a population health frame is also driving that, because, we've also seen in different areas of the world diseases that, we had nearly eradicated before having outbreaks and making comebacks because more parents are making the decision to not vaccinate their children. And again, I'm not saying that in terms of a shame or blame or getting the carrot and the stick out, but it shows these decisions by the public health system to try and encourage people to take certain steps for their health or their children's health is to keep them safe, but also the community safe, because otherwise we see outbreaks. And as you say, if we all decided to not get vaccinated for certain things, some diseases that we now don't even have on our radar would potentially crop back up and start spreading again.
I'm just gonna check the time before I go into my next rabbit hole, because I'm also like taking up too much of your time as well.
Well, I was just gonna say, mate, like and far out, I feel like luxurious in some ways saying that as someone who's not a parent yet, because holy heck, when it's your own child and you're weighing up these different things and things, I obviously know that must be a completely different kettle of fish. So for me to be a as of yet childless doctor sitting here being like, just do it, I'm more than aware that this is tricky stuff for people.
So when you just briefly, and maybe, do you have a hard stop? Are you okay to keep chatting for a little bit?
Yeah.
When you talk about using the Mental Health Act to detain individuals who may be a danger to themselves or to others, at some point there has to be a level where like delusion comes into that, right? But at what point do we take something like a conspiracy theorist? Where's the line that says you're now delusional and what you're sprouting and your actions are actually quite harmful in the community, and as such we're going to need to detain you and all your friends in Byron and just like lock you in and give you the jab?
Oh, mate, that's a doozy right there. I mean, again, I think we've seen some of these narratives playing out, and it's a very interesting time in terms of, we've seen high profile people banned and taken off social media platforms, for example, because they are spreading really very anxiety provoking, potentially dangerous stuff. And again, I'm not a name caller, but even here on our home soil, we've seen someone quite publicly shut down and taken off social media platforms because they were not just sticking to cooking dishes in the kitchen, they were trying to sell devices that would potentially protect people from COVID-19, and they were spreading really, really distressing, quite dangerous false information. So obviously, I think there is a duty on those platforms to make sure things that are blatantly dangerous and misinformed to not be shouted to millions of people. But I think in
French soup.
Yeah.
Stick to your lane.
Stay in your lane. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, psychiatry is an interesting one because the things that we have labeled as mental illness and worthy of being detained under the Mental Health Act and taken out of the community, some of those things are socially defined and described. Things that were once defined a mental illness as a modern day psych, like, shocks me to think that we labeled some things as a mental illness and we tried to treat those things with medications.
Hysteria, it's right.
Hysteria, sexual orientation, these things were actual written down diagnoses that shrinks like me would have to learn for exams. It blows my mind, but it shows that some of this stuff is quite culturally and socially defined, and where we draw that line between, you've got a very strong belief that may be completely unevidenced versus you have a mental illness that is putting you or others at very imminent danger. That's a different thing. And in terms of the Mental Health Act, it's different in different countries, but there has to be an imminent, acute threat to someone or someone else's health or life to be able to take their rights away effectively. So even if someone is mentally unwell, there needs to be a high level of quite imminent risk to be able to use that medico-legal sort of platform to detain them or to force treatment on someone, because that's obviously a very big thing. So yeah, as you say, the line is bloody hell. It's grey, mate. It's a blurry line, but again, I think you would say, let's face it, I think people who are very, very entrenched in very strong beliefs about something could be bordering on the delusional in certain aspects. A delusion is a fixed false belief that is not able to engage in any other information or any other considerations at all. And in a lot of places and spaces, you could say that some people's beliefs about different things would be bordering into that. But if it's not distressing them, if it's not putting them or others at immediate, imminent risk, then do we label that as a mental illness that needs, you know, the white coats to come in and step in? We don't. But yeah, it's a very fascinating, blurry, fine line, and I mean, some of that aspect of it is why I love psychiatry, because it's not black and white. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess the kind of the other blurry line is at what point, if you continue to, I guess, remove people from your life that have these differing opinions, are you pushing yourself more into an echo chamber of like your own beliefs and opinions too, right? So
yeah, 100%. You know, and I'm all about that, and I would like to think that most psychiatrists are. I think there's still a bit of a stereotype about psychiatry and psychiatrists now that unfortunately movies still like to push, in terms of, you know, where that strange type of doctor in some dark basement locking people up and doing horrible things to them. But, you know, psychiatry is not about telling people how to live their lives. You know, there are a lot of people out there with some very interesting, very alternative, should I say, ways that they choose to live their life and the things that they believe. But, you know, if they are happy, you know, not hurting themselves, hurting anyone else, who is medicine to say that you can't live your life this way or that way? But again, if something is clearly driving distress, danger, risk, because of what we would define as a mental illness that could be treated and improved, then yeah, the line in the sand flexes a little bit. So it's always an interesting game.
Yeah, don't envy you. Yeah, it's and again, you kind of touched on the social dilemma earlier, and it's hard. Like, I find it super hard to keep scrolling. You go, because you like go past these like whatever stupid updates or articles, and you flick through the comments, and it's this big like cheering section. But it's a double-edged sword, because if you engage, you're just giving more traction to the post, which gets it more eyes and more views. So it's like, where's the line between like, well, actually, here's like some legitimate evidence, and like just keep scrolling?
Yeah. Oh, mate. And I like find myself in that same boat so many times a day as well. Like I love the social media space, and I think it's a really brilliant thing that more doctors and health professionals are on there. But it's really hard sometimes, like you say, to not weigh in and be like,
you fucking idiot.
That's actually completely rubbish, and it's dangerous. And have you seen how many people you're like freaking out and upsetting because you said that, I don't know, the vaccine has bleach in it or something ridiculous?
You're so eloquent, Kieran.
But as you say, mate, sometimes I just want to launch in there and use much more uneloquent wording than that. But like you say,
but then you're not going to win an argument, right? When you open,
well, it's
argument, but you can't have a discussion when that's how you start it. Like, you close it.
I know, yeah, and it's like you say, it's not about giving it airtime. And you know, I think if I felt like it was going to be a constructive discussion, then that would be one thing. But often, you know, especially as a doctor on social media, you just get back the whole, oh yeah, go count more of your money from big pharma, like, you know, so you're just not going to win. So sometimes I think you just have to, you know, try and, you know, I think for all of us, you know, you don't have to be a doctor to do it. That's for damn sure. But, you know, I think if we are sending out enough light, hopefully that's going to push back the dark. It's going to push back the darkness a bit, like, to use a bit of a Star Wars metaphor. You know, I think if
it's a lot of
more of us,
It's a lot of
More of
stairs
us are
all the way up to the penthouse, isn't it, mate?
absolutely. But
Uh,
so I try and hone in on the fact that if there are more of us not engaging in that content, and there are more of us just focusing on sharing stuff that actually comes from evidence sources, then hopefully, the Jedi are kind of gonna keep on
yeah,
par with the dark
hopefully
side
that
of the force, sort of thing.
that I guess that peer pressure starts to build a little bit more around, and I think that's essentially what the idea of like a percentage with vaccinations is too. Like, the more of your mates that are getting vaccinated, probably the more likely you are to get vaccinated, right?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because research shows that as well. Even in the pandemic, with vaccination rates and vaccine hesitancy, once enough of the population get vaccinated, we do see a tipping point. And I think that's because people understandably feel more reassured, and things. So yeah, places like America and the UK have shown that as well. Because vaccine hesitancy shouldn't be a dirty word, and being hesitant or unsure or anxious about the vaccine, really, really understandable and normal. It's not the same as being anti-vax. So I think if people are feeling vaccine hesitant, I think acknowledging that they are, but feeling like they're not going to get shamed or blamed if they book in with their GP to talk about that and to ask some of their questions, that's kind of the take home with it, because vaccine hesitancy is just being unsure. It's not being anti.
Yeah.
And to reach that tipping point, we kind of just have to get enough information and enough people jumping on board to reassure others that it is okay and it is safe.
Yeah, I guess the challenge there is making sure those people are having those conversations with someone who's actually qualified to give them actual answers and not opinions.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I think, I obviously, with the stuff that I talk about and write about and things, I'm trying to stick with my lane as much as possible, and my specialty and my expertise is primarily psychiatry, obviously, but my studies and medical grounding and work at the Vaccine Hub means that trying to share little nuggets with this stuff as well. And the number one take home to people that I've been saying is just don't feel nervous, ashamed, anxious to ask your doctor some of these questions, even if it's to ask about that weird microchip thing you've read about on the internet. Your doctor is never going to make you feel like an idiot or make you feel ashamed for asking questions, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So just ask.
that big pharma quote, I'm going to use that on Michael the next time we have a disagreement.
Mate, do. I mean, like you say, I'm not going to lie. Like, they pay us really well to help them microchip people, but just stop calling us out.
The poster in the background that you got.
Just stop calling us out about it, right?
We're just human. Yeah. I noticed the other day, the last time we actually did, for anyone who's been paying attention, we actually did get to catch up and do a workout for a brief period in time there. And
yes,
one of the things that you said to me during that workout was you wanted to do more kind of just like going live, or more actual like speaking to camera. I know you're a really big fan of doing like the Q&As, and I think that there's an element of safety in that too, right? You get to kind of draft a response and sort of edit a response and make sure it sounds good. Whereas when the camera's rolling, you're like, off we go. But yeah, mate, commend you, because I noticed, was it yesterday or the day before, you started to take to just answering via videos to some of those Q&As? He's done it. He's taken the step.
Right. Yeah, we're getting there. We're treading water.
Building resilience, mate. Building resilience.
Right. I was like, screw it. Why not? You only live once. No, but no, absolutely, man. I remember saying that to you, and I'm very much still small fry with all of this stuff, but like, I remember the first time I ever went on like morning TV to talk about a health topic. I was like nauseatingly nervous the night before, and I was talking to mates back home in NZ on the phone, doctor mates, and I was like, no, I think maybe I'll just pull out of it. Like, what if I say something stupid, or what if I say something that, you know, other doctors don't agree with, or that's against the medical guidelines? They're like, Kieran, they're asking you about alcohol. Like, what are you possibly going to say that's going to create some
TV?
But, you know, I think, just as we sort of said before, I think sometimes the more information and expertise you have, the more frightening it can be to put yourself in a situation where you might not know all the answers, or you might say something wrong and then have to correct yourself later. But you know, that's the world we live in, and I think whether you're an expert or not, or a doctor or not, or whatever you're doing, you know, it's actually leaning into that uncertainty and not having all the answers as well. So yeah, I'm a perfectionist from way back, my friend. So trying to not be so perfectionistic and curated with this stuff is, something I've been trying to push to. But
completely off topic, but that would being a clinical like psychiatrist would be so tough when you like know that you're a perfectionist and you know exactly what that means and how like deep-seated that is, and then try to like reverse engineer yourself, surely, wouldn't it? Yeah,
mate, we should see some of the catch-ups Lloydie and I have. It's like a weird joint therapy session, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, psych is an interesting thing because you learn so much about human behavior and the psyche and the mind that it's impossible to not sometimes kind of step back and look at your own kind of mental habits and things. So yeah, but I mean, I guess that kind of just pulls us back to the point of, you know, doctors are just people as well. And, you know, so even for doctors, you know, this stuff isn't absolutely certain. You know, there's still new stuff coming out every day. And I think for us as a whole community, we have to lean slightly more into uncertainty at times, and that's not easy, because I think the world in general at the moment wants magic bullets, certainty, perfection, and unfortunately that's not the way life is, and the pandemic has been the poster child for that, I think. So yeah, I'm chipping the perfectionism out of me.
working on it
constantly.
And I imagine it must be hard to turn off, right? Like, yeah.
From work and things, man?
Like, just in terms of like even your own like personal development, or like the way that you develop your own self-awareness, like having the amount of knowledge that people like you and Michael have, like I don't know that I'd be able to handle it. Like, I think you get heavy under the knowledge, wouldn't you? Of like,
yeah. I mean, you might be giving us a bit too much credit there, mate. I mean, well, me anyway. Like Lloydie's another level of human. But
sometimes I'll have a chat with Michael, and he'll be like, like, that's interesting, and I'm like, fuck, he's doing it. He's doing it on me right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, it can, and you know, I think that's why it's so important, and you know this about me better than anyone, but you know, that's why having things where you can just step out of doctor mode or psychiatrist mode is so important, at least for me, and that's what the gym and fitness and exercise has always been. So yeah, but it definitely can be hard to switch off, but I think I'm reasonably good at it, because it's like if I go on a first date or something. It's like if I go on a date and and she's like, "Oh, so does that mean you're like analyzing me right now?" And I'm like, "No, I can just switch it off." But you always see in people's eyes that they're like,
that's interesting.
Really?
That she would think that. I wonder why she thinks that. Why did she ask that?
You can go down so many rabbit holes in so many ways, but yeah, no, I think learning to become a psychiatrist is also about that, because in an interview or an assessment with someone, you have to connect and be with them in that moment, but also learn to also stay objective and be the anchor point rather than just get pulled into things. And I think learning to manage the emotional, mental kind of burden that can come with the job for all doctors is something, that we have to learn to manage too. Surgeons have to learn to manage cases that go wrong or losing patients on the operating table, and psychiatrists probably have to learn to mentally manage, seeing and hearing and dealing with incredibly emotionally intense, complex stuff, but then coming home to their family and their partner and their life and not just holding that inside of them like a sponge. So yeah, it's
maybe 30-hour residency shifts.
Maybe that's why they break us down, because they're just like,
rebuild you.
We'll just break you, and then and then you won't be able to think of anything at all because it's just
incredible. Yeah, it's incredibly hard to get distracted by family and social life if you don't have either, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. When all you do is work and sleep, it's it's not hard to have to juggle those things.
Lovely, mate. Thanks so much for taking the time. Hopefully,
thank you, man.
Sit down. I've got a list as long as my arm of stuff that I really want to talk to you and Michael about, and fun stuff too. I find psychedelics in psychiatry and treatment of that super fascinating.
Yeah, so interesting. Hey?
I'd love to go down a bit of a rabbit hole in terms of that with you guys at some stage. Maybe that can be our first panel, a little panel of experts.
Yeah, mate, we can do a joint one. Shit, I'll have to step it up for that. But yeah, no, mate, absolute pleasure. And thanks for getting me on for my rambles as always. But
mate.
Yeah, no, that was really, really good. And I think the name of the game here for people listening is just to, not shy away from talking to your doctor about this stuff, because you're well backed to be feeling uncertain, unsure, worried about some of the stuff that's going on in the world at the moment. So, stay off Dr. Google and Facebook and talk to your actual doctor. And
yeah. And I think if anyone is still listening at this point, you're definitely a good one to follow on Instagram, not just, I guess, for the content that you put out, but I quite like the way that you do refer onto other doctors and experts that kind of have a bit more in depth about the specific questions you get asked. So you're definitely a good resource to have. So
thanks, my man. Back at you.
A little bit of a plug.
No, pleasure, mate. We'll kick it off again soon.
Beautiful. Cheers.
Thanks, mate.